Government corruption has never been more prevalent or caused more harm. It's why extremism is on the rise. It's why the financial gap between the haves and have-nots has never been wider. And it's why our planet is at risk of an extinction level tragedy. That's why I need your help to keep exposing the truth about the rot on both sides of the aisle. Become a supporter or a friend of the show today by clicking on the coffee link in the description box below. Friends of the show join me on a Zoom hangout once a month, and you guys can ask me any questions you want, and I can get to know you better. But the most important reason to help is to keep the show alive. Together, we can and will save our country and our planet. Thanks in advance and enjoy the show. Hey everyone, welcome to the show. I have some important updates to share about the Oath Keepers. First, former Oath Keeper spokesman Jason Van Tattenhove is scheduled to testify at the hearing tomorrow on Tuesday morning. That's at 10 a.m. Eastern. Tattenhove was apparently very close to Oath Keepers founder Stuart Rhodes, and word is that he's planning to share how the group became radicalized during his tenure. It was about 18 months between 2015 and 2016. Earlier this year, Tattenhove told the Denver Post that Rhodes used ever-increasing radical ideas to increase his influence and his bank account. Tattenhove said, quote, "He's going to cater to wherever the money is coming from. He knows his base. That's where they're at." In addition to this news, federal prosecutors filed a 28-page document last Friday. In this document, they alleged that Oath Keepers member Thomas Caldwell had a document at his home titled Death List. Caldwell, as you guys likely know, is one of the Oath Keepers who's charged with seditious conspiracy, and included on this death list that he had was the name of a Georgia election official, as well as the name of one of his or her family members. The prosecutor wrote in the filing, quote, that Caldwell made and kept a death list that includes officials involved in the presidential election process contemporaneous with his preparation to travel to Washington, D.C., illustrates his actions during the alleged conspiracy and intent to oppose by force the transfer of power. Now, Caldwell issued a statement through his attorney, and he said, quote, "The DOJ's claim that I intended to assassinate election workers is an absolute 100% disgusting lie. Unfortunately, the DOJ has withheld from the public the evidence that exonerates me by hiding behind protective orders." I mean, who doesn't keep a death list lying around, right? We all got one. Anyway, I'm sure he didn't mean anything by it. So the new filing also claims that while some of the Oath Keepers stashed their weapons at that hotel in Virginia, there was a third group from North Carolina, and they had their weapons in vehicles in the parking lot near the Capitol. But the really explosive news, and pun totally intended, was that Oath Keepers member Jeremy Brown is now accused of taking explosives to the Capitol. You guys may remember that Brown's home and his RV were searched, and that was when he was arrested. And at that time, the FBI had confiscated guns and they confiscated military grenades. And they found those grenades in the same RV that Brown drove to DC, but they didn't know if he had them in the RV at the time that he was in DC. But Oath Keepers member Caleb Berry, he is one of the Oath Keepers members who took a cooperation deal. He told the FBI that he heard from Oath Keepers member Kelly Meggs that Brown had those explosives with him when he was in DC. As of now, Brown hasn't been charged with seditious conspiracy, and so far they haven't charged him with having these weapons there, but it's likely because this is third-hand information, right? So prosecutors are going to need more than that to prove that he actually took the grenades to DC or to the Capitol, but they just asked a judge for approval to introduce all of this information in the upcoming Oath Keepers trial. That's going to be in September. Another thing that was revealed in their filing that they also want introduced at the trial is that the Oath Keepers allegedly took weapons with them when they attended Donald Trump's November 2020 rally in DC. That was also to protest the election results. So anything that's not directly related to January 6th they have to get approval from the judge to introduce it at the trial. But the prosecutors claim that during that trip, the group stashed their weapons, what they refer to as their quick reaction force, also in a nearby vehicle in Arlington, Virginia, because bringing weapons into DC is illegal. But, right across the bridge, right across the river is Virginia. They also want the jury to hear that Oath Keepers member Jessica Watkins allegedly kept bomb making instructions in her home. And according to multiple news outlets, the Oath Keepers plan to tell the jury that they believe that Trump was going to make them his own personal militia group on January 6th. That's their defense. Stuart Rhodes' own attorney acknowledges that this sounds completely absurd. He told Insider News that people will be saying, quote, "They believe what? These guys are fucking crazy." I mean, we already thought that, so it doesn't degrade them in our minds. But anyway, he hopes that the jurors are also going to accept that they were only there for two reasons. They only came to DC for two reasons, and the sedition had nothing to do with it. They only came for the ladies and the drinks, the ladies and the drinks, the ladies and the drinks. Sorry, I couldn't resist. Anyway, back to the serious stuff. So their attorney plans to argue that they were only at the Capitol to, number one, provide security for various Trump allies. And then the second reason was because they believed that Trump was going to invoke the Insurrection Act and call upon them to take up arms to stop the so-called election theft, quote unquote. So legal experts are pointing out, there's numerous issues. There's numerous reasons why the second argument just will not be allowed to stand. It doesn't make any sense. But the most important one that I've heard so far, I think, is that even if Trump had invoked the Insurrection Act, even if he had made the Oath Keepers an official federal militia that day to try to retain power, it still would have been sedition. Right? They still would have been committing sedition. The only difference is, so would Trump. The DOJ probably would have already charged Trump with seditious conspiracy. He would have been included in the indictment along with them. Anyway, guys, I will let you know when and if I hear more. Thanks so much for watching and listening. Take care. I'll talk with you soon.